What do agriculture, making perfumes, and sexually confusing insects have in common? That's right, they were all part of my weekend last week. I have a very interesting light, skull emoji. But they also all involve synthetic animal pheromones. Carlson and Lucier coined the term pheromone from phero, meaning I carry, and hormone, meaning stimulating. What's the difference between an enzyme and a pheromone? You can't make an enzyme, but you can make a pheromone. The definition of a pheromone is some sort of substance that is secreted by some organism in order to induce some sort of behavioral or physiological change within another organism. In this video, we're mostly going to be talking about the behavioral changes induced by pheromones that are caused by the sense of smell. You see a couple of pheromones in your everyday life. For example, have you seen a dog urinate on a fire hydrant? Have you seen a cat push its face into your hand? Have you ever seen your roommate poop on his bed? I have. I really need a new roommate. But one of the first pheromones that was ever discovered is called bombicol, a silkworm sex pheromone. Bombicol operates by alerting other silkworms to a female's location. This way, a lot of farmers can use it because when they put bombicol in a specific location, a lot of insects will flock to that location looking for mates. Turns out there is no mates, and they just got tricked. Pheromones serve a wide variety of purposes: alarm, sex, territory, and we as humans can exploit all those purposes in order to suit human needs. One of the biggest ways that we do that is by synthesizing pheromones through microbes in plants. With microbes in plants, we genetically engineer their genes so that they have genes that make them produce pheromones. Congratulations, you have a pheromone. Some of you with strange ideas of mind control might be wondering if pheromones can control humans too. Well, I conducted a study myself on my roommate.
It's like you haven't showered in weeks.
Well, that's because I haven't.
That's not how this is.
One really important study that's influential to our understanding of pheromones' effects on humans was by Joe in 2014. In Joe, they found that two compounds could actually influence how masculine or feminine a person seemed. They found that tetraenol made men think that a figure was more feminine, while another substance called androstenedione would make women and gay men think that a figure was more masculine. That means that we can actually subvert our consciousness and cognitions just by using smell.
Right, so like, if I use enough pheromones, I can like get women to like them.
Yeah, but how are we gonna get a lot of them?
Let's talk about animal pheromone synthesis. It started in the 60s when scientists began to identify and replicate natural chemical signals that influence animal behavior. Some goals of synthesis are verifying pheromone structures, large-scale preparations for pest management, and clarification of structure-activity relationships. The first pheromone to be isolated, identified, and later synthesized in the laboratory by Adolf Butenandt was bombicol, sex pheromone of silkworm moth Bombyx mori, shown here. And he began with thousands of silkworms from which he extracted tiny amounts of organic material using different solvents. He then tested various concentrations on male moths to determine the lowest concentration that prompted rapidly beating wings or the flutter dance exhibited by males under the influence of bombicol. Successful purification took about 20 years for Butenandt's team, but structural identification took only 1 year. Using the relatively new technique of infrared spectroscopy, the team established the presence of an alcohol group and conjugated double bonds. He then subjected bombicol to catalytic hydrogenation and compared the formed cetyl alcohol with authentic cetyl alcohol to show that the melting point had not changed. He then esterified bombicol and determined the position of the double bonds by oxidative degradation. The structure was confirmed through synthesis. Because each double bond can take either the E or Z configurations, there are 4 possible isomers. The team prepared all 4 and determined that 10E12Z was the only isomer biologically active as a pheromone. Due to advancement in the field of organic synthesis and the application potential for pest management, there are hundreds of reported insect syntheses. Pheromone chemistry uses many methodologies, such as carbon-carbon coupling reactions, organotransition metal reactions including ring-closing olefin metathesis, asymmetric epoxidations and dihydroxylations, and enzymatic reactions. Lepidoptera and Coleoptera pheromones are commonly synthesized, as these orders of insect are widespread, diverse, and contain many agricultural and forestry pests. Here is a synthesis example involving a chirolactone available from recycled industrial wastewater. Key steps are olefinations between an aldehyde and a sulfone to eventually yield the sex pheromone of the tea tussock moth. For any synthesis, the mechanism will depend on many factors, including the structure and availability of the target compound.
After animal pheromones are synthesized, they are then able to be mass-produced and sold to consumers. One of the most commonly sold synthetic animal pheromones is DAP. Dog-appeasing pheromone, or DAP, is a synthetic replication of a natural chemical that is secreted by lactating dogs through the mammary glands to calm their litter. It was first synthesized in 1999. This pheromone is made out of fatty acid esters that play an important role in stress modulation. Commercial synthetic versions of DAP, such as Adaptil or Verbac, aim to replicate these calming effects for dogs of all ages in a variety of stressful situations. DAP is not a single molecule, but rather a blend of esters that have been derived from long-chain fatty acids. The 4 most common components include oleic acid, a monounsaturated omega-9 fatty acid, palmitic acid, an saturated fatty acid, linoleic acid, an essential polyunsaturated omega-6 fatty acid, and stearic acid, a smaller saturated component. The ratio of these compounds varies in amount between breeds, so to combat this, commercially available formulas are reported to have average concentrations to ensure a broad efficacy among breeds. However, this complexity also explains why synthetic DAP cannot be represented by a single structural formula, but rather as a balanced mixture mimicking natural secretions. Okay, so that was a lot of information. Let's go to my local pet store to check out some of the main administrative methods of DAP. Come on, let's go! In most pet stores, you'll find ADP available in 3 common forms. First, we have the calming spray, which is used mostly in veterinary situations or when you need immediate relief. Then we have the diffuser, which is used on more of a bigger scale, often used in kennels to reduce barking levels. And then lastly, you have the calming collar. Obviously, this can only be used on one dog, and it provides a dermal release over longer periods of time. Sounds like the dogs in the back could use some, but Pascal, come here. Sit. What'd you think? Do you want to go learn more? Come on, let's go.
What the dog doing?
First, the dog smells something, inhaling the pheromone of the room around them. Then, the non-volatile DAP binds to the mucus in the nasal cavity, entering the veromaronasal organ, or the VNO, through the nasoplastin duct. The VNO sensory neurons then express G-protein-coupled receptors that bind to the fatty acid components of DAP and activate these receptors. The receptors then project a neural relay from the olfactory bulb to the amygdala and then the hypothalamus, which modulate a dog's emotional and hormonal response. Lastly, there is a behavioral response to signify reduced stress, such as less panting, pacing, or barking. Got all that?
Another application of synthetic pheromones is pest control. This is Bill. He's an insect, and as an insect he has antennae, which if we take a closer look at, we can see he has cincilla covering them. Cincilla are modified hairs that perceive specific stimuli such as pheromones. The dendrites of the cincilla are designed to be sensitive to stimulus, so when it picks up on a pheromone, that stimulus travels down to the sensory neuron where it's converted into an electrical signal. That signal is then transmitted along nerve connections to the central nervous system for processing. So, as an eco-friendly alternative to pesticides, synthetic sex pheromones are sprayed on crops. This will make Bill think that there's a mate nearby, and he'll travel towards the source of that pheromone to find that quote-unquote mate. With no actual mates nearby, Bill isn't able to reproduce. Therefore, the synthetic pheromone acts as pest control by preventing insect mating and ultimately decreasing the population of pests.